All right, the agenda for tonight, I'm going to be talking a bit, as I normally do. I've got a few things for new charges and the likes to update you on there hasn't been much since I probably gave an update around November, but there hasn't really been a lot of DC fast chargers installed in Queensland in the last few months, and Christmas, New Year contributes to that a fair bit. I'm going to go through the events that are coming up and just give you a little different segment, just a few bits and pieces that have come up for those that aren't always on Facebook and don't spend a lot of time online. I'll just give you a few EV things that have come up. Then Joel's going to give us a chat about his Ryobi 48-volt zero turn. There's a couple of clips of him using that and some slides to go through. We'll do some questions, and then Nathan will give us a chat about the round off of the 2021 EV sales numbers. So let's get started. For those of you that may not know, I don't know if this was broadly advertised, but Kingaroy got a council installed charger. It's a tritium RTM, which can have up to 75 kilowatt, but this one's a 50. And yeah, the South Burnett Council put that one in. It has the dual charging, one plug's CCS and one's CHAdeMO. So obviously these two guys couldn't be charging at the same time. And I don't know if you've noticed this on PlugShare, because I would like to spam my Kona on all the different charging sites, with my number plate visible, but they've blacked out everyone's number plate now, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, ruined my fun. But just some numbers there for the Kingaroy charger, if we ever go out there. But I thought it might be interesting because people go, well, that's some distance, but when we've done Toombul to Warwick or similar long distance trips, that's been 164 k's one way, and Toombul to Kingaroy is 211, so about another 50 k's extra, which yeah, pushing it for a round trip without a charge. But yeah, maybe that's a bit too far to go for one day trip. But we were looking at going at a wind farm out there. There's one around there somewhere that we're looking at seeing as the Warwick trip was so good. But yeah, we'll have to see. I don't think it's just quite as far as Kingaroy anyway. So the next charger that I've managed to find is one on PlugShare at the Callumvale Central Shopping Centre. It's a 50 kilowatt DC with also, I've never seen this layout before. I haven't really seen one of these chargers, but if you have a look closely, this isn't operational yet. It's kind of early days and not opened, I don't believe, but the plugs on the left, the blue and the black one, the normal CCS and CHAdeMO, but then there's a plug on the right that's 43 kilowatt AC. So I haven't seen that before. And then you can see on the photo on the right hand side there, you've got what I believe is twin 22 kilowatt ACs, and I think that's the same charger that they have out at Warwick as the sort of the redundancy charger for the 50 kilowatt. So that's at Callumvale, so that's interesting. Maybe we'll get down there and check that out for the Southsiders, because the South was always lacking until they built the.
Your car wouldn't take 43.
Mine takes 7. So yeah. So yeah, Zoe's I think do 22, and some of the Model S do 22. I don't know if anything does higher than 22, does it? Not too sure. And this one, I think it's quite new, but it kind of snuck in because of when you're looking at the Gold Coast, you know, they installed a fair few of these chargers on the Gold Coast in the last sort of 12 months. But this one they put in at the Pimpamar Sports Hub, and it has 3 75 kilowatt RTMs. So, you know, that's a handy site, really. 3. Normally they're putting in 1. So I'm not quite sure why they put in 3, but potentially they can handle 6 cars at once. So that's some forward planning. As long as 3 of them are CharterMo and 3 of them are CCS. So.
I don't know, and maybe Les can give you some insight to that if he's not cooking his rice. But I don't think those models can actually split between the two at one time.
No, they definitely can.
They definitely can.
They definitely can.
Yeah.
Yep. They're they initially when they rolled out at the Gold Coast they couldn't, but there was a software update that was done probably in the last 6 months, and I think if you see any of the Tritium advertising, there's actually a presentation of their chargers at the Tritium site, and it does show you 2 cars charging at once, and it shows you on the screen. You know, I was very close to, let me just bring a plug share for 1 second. You see that?
That's simultaneous charging.
Can you guys see that now? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that shows you one side and the other side, so occupied and available. So yeah, they definitely do.
And so does that mean that there's no opportunity to be 75 one side?
So it's my understanding there's 3 modules in the 70. Okay, so
that's right.
The people who are purchasing the chargers have the choice of 25, 50, or 75. And on this one here, it says, this is interesting, and I'm going to make an assumption. It's saying that it's charging at 49.5 kilowatt, and the other side has 25 available.
No.
Well, it says 25, or is that just the limitation of CharterMo for that side?
That one only has 2 modules. So as soon as you plug in,
it'll derate the other one.
Yeah, the other one will.
Yeah. I wasn't too sure. Yeah, I thought it would be. Yeah, so way to annoy some other EV owner by halving their speed, when you turn up. But them's the brakes. But yeah, I mean, honestly, how many? Here's a question: is there a car, a CharterMo car that can make King of Roy?
Yeah, 62 kilowatt hour Leafs. They're around.
Okay, mate. All right, you're right. 62 kilowatt hour Leaf. Yeah. Okay.
An Outlander with a bunch of fuel.
Okay. Here we go. All right, you can see the presentation again. Okay. Can you see it? I can't see what you guys are seeing. You can see it? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
right. So just for anyone who doesn't attend the meetings and hasn't seen these slides before, I just thought I'd whack them in and I'll quickly whip through them, because it seems to come up on the Facebook group a fair bit about charging locations, but essentially these are the ones that are coming with the Future Fuels Fund funding. You can see all those orange dots are going to be DC fast chargers. We have, and I did some other slides where it compared what we have now with, and I overlay the ones that are coming. So it's the Sunshine Coast, a few extra there. The Brisbane North side with what we've got at the moment and what we're going to have. So really, if you live in the Chermside, Mitchelton area, you're going to have so much choice. And the south side, I saw some comments recently online that they didn't have any charging, and you know they are getting mountains. So nothing to fear, just hold on. I have asked how long this is going to take from a few people that should know, and it sounds like they don't really get to say anything for a little while yet. So we have the Gold Coast and what's coming for the Gold Coast. So good times for DC fast charging. I did notice also on PlugShare this week that some of these Outback sites had a PlugShare marker, but then they've been deleted. So I'm not sure what the go is there. But yeah, the Kingaroy one that's on here is not the one. It's my understanding is not the one that's been installed. So the government will be installing another one in Kingaroy, and that'll be helpful. So, right, that's it for the latest EV infrastructure. There wasn't much to report for the last few months, but there's a few that have come online. Future EV events. Now, I've packed this pretty full of the things that I know of so far and we've been invited to and plan on participating in. Luke posted on the AEVA Facebook page today that they're doing a drive to lunch on this Sunday with a bit of a winery tour at a couple of stops. So if anyone's on here needs details, then just contact myself or Luke and we can pass on the details.
And just ahead of that, Luke and a number of others from the Tesla side are going to go to, and including myself, going to go to the Tigam Coffee and Cars this Saturday morning as well, which is for all comers and all folks, but there's going to be a contingent of EVs there for that.
Did you, is there anything on the Facebook group for that?
So it's definitely a Toka event. It's in the Toka app, and I think it's in a couple of other spots.
Someone just want to throw up a post. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That'd be good. For the other areas in Queensland, tonight there's actually a meeting in Cairns for the guys up there. And then on the 2nd of March, which I believe is the first Wednesday of each month, Toowoomba is planning on having their meetings, and I've attended a couple of those, and Townsville's having one there as well at the at EV North's workshop. So there is other things going on around Queensland if you're watching from afar. Unfortunately, we haven't had any hall meeting this year, but I'm quite confident that we can make a hall meeting for the 16th of March, which is the third Wednesday of March. So yeah, we'll go for an in-person meeting. We have an EV catch-up, the 20th of March. That is Sunday the 20th. So I haven't created that event yet, but I'm going to do one at Toombul Shopping Centre, just so it's local, and then I'll go back to doing them around the place. Ellen from Solar Citizens wanted to have a chat about their event that they are planning. Are you there, Ellen?
I am, yeah. How you going? Is now a good time?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. Well, thanks, John. And hi, everyone. There's a few people that I know from organising the Logan EV event, but my name's Ellen Roberts and I'm the National Director of Solar Citizens. So we've been going for about 10 years. We're a national organisation made up of rooftop solar owners. And in the last year or so, we've started doing more advocacy around electric vehicles because many of our most active members in terms of the rooftop solar and batteries are also very passionate EV drivers, as you can imagine, and EV is a very important part of the energy transition. So we've campaigned mostly, well, we sort of got involved around the proposed road user charge, but we've been looking at a range of policy improvements. So we're an advocacy organisation, essentially. We did a bunch of work last year around Queensland's zero emissions vehicle strategy and what should be in there. But we think that like talking to the community about EVs is obviously really important in itself, and also a good opportunity to engage with decision makers around policy. So we are going to have 2 EV days this year. So we ran one last year in collaboration with both AEVA and TOCA that had test rides, display cars, and a few stalls. So we want to do a similar thing. I think because of COVID, we're going to omit the test rides. So we'll just have display cars and stalls. So they'll be all outdoors and people will be able to safely socially distance. So we're still actually in the process of locking in the venue for the late April one. I realise that's quite soon, but I was keen if AEVA was interested to be a partner with us on that, as you were with Logan. It was really great. I think particularly in terms of recruiting, EV enthusiasts who might be interested in displaying their cars. And we're keen for someone, if there was anyone on the day, I think maybe playing a similar role to what Gary did last year, just kind of liaising with the display cars and setting them all up, etc. So yeah, it'd be great if you guys wanted to get involved. Obviously, we're happy to do the heavy lifting in terms of the advertising and the recruitment and the structure.
Do we know what region that's going to be in, Ellen?
Yes, very good question. So it'll be on the north side and the inner north. So we're just narrowing down the venues. So we're very hopeful of getting the Victoria Parklands, which is in Hurston there near the hospital. It's a good new council venue outdoors with parking, but otherwise at UQ. And then the showgrounds as a backup if we really get desperate. So we're going to nail down the venue hopefully this week. But yes,
so more CBD,
in the north.
CBD-ish.
That's right. CBD plus, yes. Okay. So yeah, if as I said, if you're interested in being involved, that would be great. We worked closely with Simone last year, partly because she was from that area, but also very active. So it's obviously just really great to have you guys involved with the depth of your
I'm sure we can help.
Experience.
Did you have a second one you were thinking about doing?
So the other one is probably going to be a bit smaller, but the organising is sort of more underway for it. That's on the 2nd of April at the Strand in Townsville. Okay. So we're working with the AEVA guys up there, including EV North. So the Strand, people might know, is just a very popular park on the waterfront in Townsville. So council's given us that venue and we'll have sort of 10 cars and some stalls and stuff there. So on a weekend, it should be good. There's lots of kind of foot traffic as well. So
excellent.
Nothing on the Cleveland EV experience scale. So smaller events, but still, I think a lot of interest. And we're keen to sort of, I guess it's an election year and we want all parties to have good policies on EVs that all of them could improve, I think. So that's part of what we would hope to achieve from it.
All right. Excellent. I'm sure we can help you out with that.
Who would be the best contact? Would that be you, John, or is there someone
just else? Me. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can have a longer chat. Yep. Okay, wonderful. Did you need me to stay for the rest of the meeting, or?
As you please.
Okay. I might stay for a bit, but I might jump off in a little while.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So we were looking at doing, as displayed on the screen, the Ipswich Planes, Trains and Auto. That was just a smaller one, maybe a couple of cars attending that one. But there is a more formal EV event coming on at the RNA Showgrounds on the 14th and 15th of May, which is the Electric Dreams. And we do have a stall there with Graham from Oz DIY. So, and I believe Toka might be putting in a stall as well. And it looks like a pretty high-end type of event, so I'm looking forward to that one. The Noosa EV Expo and RACQ Motorfest are on the same day, and I think I had a bit of a chat with some of the committee guys, and I think we'll probably try and get people to both, but we'll have to chat about that a bit more. The AEVA National Conference is in the ACT this year, and that's the 5th to 7th of August. and yeah, we're still having, our mind is set on doing another Cleveland experience, thanks to how well it went last year. So that's really it for the AEVA events. Obviously, each month I'll keep you updated as these progress. But now that if COVID settles down, I'll go back to doing the EV meetups each month at the different locations: Sunshine Coast, Gold Coast, North side, South side, and at in the central area as well. So keep an eye out for those. All right, just a couple of things in case you've missed them in the news. Tritium listed on the stock exchange with the code DCFC, which some people would recognize as DC fast charger. So if you're looking for their share shortcut name, and here's a chart of how they've gone. They listed on the 14th of January at about $9.80, I think it was, roughly about. And then it, just went about its business, and then they announced a meeting with Joe Biden, and it had a massive spike in price. So I think it's settled down after that. But yeah, that's just a bit of random news. I've got a few EVs to discuss. The next 3 or 4 slides are ones that are anticipated relatively shortly. And the first one is the BYD Yuan that has been renamed as the Atto 3 or Atto 3. I don't know how you pronounce that one, but it's got quite a spaceship looking interior to it. And if you look at some of the reviews online, there's some funky styling going on in the inside, but I think there's 4 different levels of trim in this car, and they price from about 30, very high 30s to, i.e. 40 grand to 48,000. So from what I could tell, there was a 50 and a 60 kilowatt hour battery, and the real world range was quoted. You might see the NEDC numbers as a bit higher than that, but I read a few posts that the real world numbers are a little bit lower, so about 380 and 450. The Polestar 2, I think we've mentioned this is coming a couple of times before, but I've seen the expected price is meant to be 63,000 drive away for the base model. Well, that's good. Once again, these couple of slides, there's a couple of different trim levels. So you've got like I think in the Polestar 2, it has a single motor smaller battery, a single motor larger battery, which is the long range, and then has a dual motor larger battery. So you do have either 350 or 400 kilometer range with that one. The EV6, I think most people are familiar that the Ioniq 5 and EV6 are sort of sister cars, and that yeah, they're due out shortly. I think there was an initial pool of about 500, expected to be around about 75 grand for the standard range, and I've made up these numbers because I prefer to give the on-road costs with the on-road costs number, because it's a bit misleading otherwise. But 75 with on-road costs and 79 with on-road costs for the long range. And they have a 54 and a 72 kilowatt hour usable battery. And yeah, even though Hyundai are well known and Kia are known for making efficient cars, the larger cars are obviously seeing a reduction in efficiency, most likely due to, obviously aerodynamics and weight. So they're starting to see 17 kilowatt hours per 100 or 170 watt hours per 100 per kilometer, sorry. But yeah, And then we have the car sponsored by Bugs Bunny, the BMW iX. Now, I think I deleted my comment up here, but you know, if you actually hide the front, it's not a bad looking car. But you know, in my opinion, they haven't done themselves any service by having the front looking like that. But yeah, it reminds me a lot of the Polestar too. If you they're very similar in my mind. The range is 350 with a 76 kilowatt hour usable. So, and 136,000. That's going to be out of a lot of people's price range. So, the Cali Hotel are using it as a limo. Okay.
Yeah, I saw it in the Valley last week, and black one, or very dark grey. Looks great from the rear 3/4, but yeah.
It's getting savaged on online about the looks.
I'll tell you how many. They're sold later.
Okay, cool. Looking forward to that. And I think that is it for a roundup of news. Yeah, that was a lot about the cars that are coming to market, but each month I'll try and do a bit and bits and pieces from different news things, not just cars that are coming to market. So, okay, Joel, you good to go?
Yeah, I'm all good, thank you.
All right. Joel has purchased a Ryobi 42-inch deck, 0 turn, and he's going to chat to us about his experience with that so far. Take it away, Joel.
Thanks everyone. Yeah, so we purchased one of these ones not that long ago, about a month or two ago. Been going really well. Just to let everyone know, I've been attending AEVA for about 6 months, just joined up. I'm not from Ryobi at all, so it's not an endorsement of Ryobi, but we've had really good experience with it so far. From an electronics background, so network communications and so forth. We own 2 rural properties, a 5-acre and a 10-acre block out in the Scenic Rim area. A lot of experience with solar. We installed a 10 kilowatt grid system over 15 years ago on our first property, back when we had still got the 54-cent feed-in tariff, which is quite good, which will be running out shortly. We also own a 10-year-old first generation Nissan Leaf. So we're basically trying to electrify everything as much as we can. Let's go to the next slide, please. Yep. So we started electrifying my mowing about 5 years ago. We lived in suburbia, had a heap of Makita tools. I'm a technician by trade. So it was logical for me to just go and grab a clean skin tool, which was the dual 18-volt mower. Works really well if you keep on top of your grass. Anything sort of over halfway up your knee height, sort of when you let it get away, it does struggle a bit. Admittedly, my batteries are quite old, so maybe new batteries and the Makita would do a lot better. Yeah, so let's go to the next slide. Yep. So did a bit of research when I was purchasing the Ryobi. Ryobi's really the only one on the market with a 0 turn in the battery. I've been told the Ego one is similar. That does have a 0 turn, but I found it very hard to find at the time of purchasing. So the Ryobi's got 3 models. They got the small traditional ride-on. It's a smaller 20-inch deck. The medium one, it's the exact same model, just with a different battery size in it, and a little larger deck. And my larger 0 turn. So the 0 turn's got a 100 amp hour battery. Big bank of them in there. And the Toro, I wasn't able to really find in Australia.
I don't know if it's in Australia, mate, but the I found it when you had just fact check. I had a look, and there's one over there, but I mean, the ones you're talking about are like 5 kilowatt hours or something like that, and this thing here, the Toro, is 23 kilowatt hours. So I can only imagine that's something like 30 or 40 grand or something
Yeah.
like that in Australia. So maybe even more.
Out of the price range for what we were needing. Probably good for councils and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I wasn't too sure, so I thought I'd get you to check on that one. Okay. The Ego. So that was the other model I was looking at the time. It was hard to source at the time, and it also protrudes a lot out the back. For a zero turn, in my opinion, you don't really want it sticking out the back. And there's a slide later on which shows it, that battery area at the back, like really sticking out. So it includes 4 batteries, like a Makita battery, like battery tools. They do slot into a caddy in the back. It can take up to 6. So it's 2 kilowatt hours with the 4 batteries, or bumps up to 3 kilowatt hours with the 6 of it in. If you had lots and lots of batteries and want to spend lots of time, you could mow continuously all day, but that would be a very expensive exercise in doing that.
Do you know how much the batteries are for the Ego?
No, I didn't research that one. I didn't go into that. Yeah, so one advantage it does have, if you've got the full range of Ego, other chainsaws and things like that, you can use this as a charger. So you can plug all your batteries in at once, and it will charge all your tool batteries at the same time, as opposed to have individual chargers. You can imagine having 6 of those on the wall would be pretty messy. I'll get you to the next slide for me. Yep. So that it's the Ryobi's got a very high density way of packaging the batteries compared to the Ego. And that's just a picture from the manual on how to pull the batteries out. I haven't done that yet. Being a new mower, I won't be doing that till batteries start going on me. I think they're just a sealed lead acid. There's nothing special in the technology. They're not like lithium ion or anything spectacular. Having the extra weight's quite good on the mower as well, because it helps with the traction a little bit. Get you to the next slide. Yep. So that's the 2 controllers. The one on the left is the images for the Ego, pulled off the web, whereas the one on the right, that's my one after a couple of weeks of running. So if you're into that sort of high-tech looking thing, the Ego is probably your best bet, but it's not really needed. Here's the next slide. Yeah, so this thing cost me about $7,500, which is about half the cost of our second-hand Leaf at the time, which is $15,000. But they're very hard to find on the market now, the second-hand Leafs. And the main thing I like about it is how quiet it is. You can actually, it sounds like an electric scooter going from A to B, like going around the paddocks. We used it a couple of weekends ago, moving logs and things like that. It's got really good towing power. And we were using it all day, not as a mower, but just with a carry cart on the end and carrying things around, and it did not drop from 100%. It just went all day. It's quite good in that respect. It's obviously the blades which are chewing the battery on these things. Pretty quiet too. My boss has got one. He saw my mower and he went out and got the smaller one for a smaller property. He actually rang me on it one afternoon, and I thought he was at the air show. That's what it sounded like in the background. So I'm not sure if we're breaking any traffic laws with all that. So yeah, I'll just go to the next slide. I got some good photos, John. So the independent drives, there's no belts or anything like that. The motor sits directly on top of the blades. It really senses if you hit a stump or a metal pole, which I did, and bent my blades, it stops really quickly, and it just shuts the blades down. And it's like all zero turns. It's so agile getting around. Like going around trees and things like that. It's no problem at all. Quite fine. So this is the advertising. It's really weird that they do it with no grass. It's really, this is just a YouTube clip, which I got. So I thought I'd show some better ones. So this is some real life examples.
Can you hear this?
Yep.
Looks like fun, actually, doesn't it? It does sound like a bit of an air show. I don't know if you guys can hear the same thing. Okay, so this is progressively worse, right? So the backyard.
Yeah, it just gets to the from the backyard to the paddock.
Okay, and I think the next slide we have longer grass again. All right.
Yeah, so Ryobi are quite conservative, in my opinion, because they say this one will do designed for a 3-acre block. But once the grass is down, I reckon you'd easily do that in a day, like just running around. Going through tough grass like that, we get about 2 hours out of it, and that was about an acre in size. So we're just it's quite manageable now. It's down a fair bit. Yeah, so I'll go to the next slide. I think that was almost it. Oh no, there's one last thing. That's right. I connected up an Anderson plug to the back of the mower because the isolation of the battery is just an Anderson plug, the connector. And I've got an old unused inverter. So that will actually run, it's a 3 kilowatt inverter. So that will run the house, well, the fridge and the water pump, because we get quite a few blackouts out in our area when there's a big storm goes by, and it can be 2 to 3 days sometimes. So I thought it'd be better use rather than using the petrol generator.
Yeah, that's good. And like your grass is never getting that long anymore, is it? Because that thing looks pretty fun, right?
Yeah, we're on it every weekend now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and we just moved back into the property. The tenants didn't look after the property that very well, so it was a fair bit of work to get done to get the property back to a manageable state before we get the horses back onto it.
Yeah. So that sounded like anyone who's got questions, pop them in the chat and I'll ask now. But that sounded like relatively loud coming through the microphone on the phone, but I'm assuming in real life it's nothing compared to say a ride-on mower.
Well, I've got. It's interesting because there's no hearing protection warnings on any of their products, including this one, and I can actually hold a conversation on a telephone. So that's the level of the sound that you would get from it.
Yeah, wouldn't it be cheaper to get some sheep? Is the comment. I don't know about that, Gav. Come on, mate. So, all right. So, and lead acid batteries, are they?
Yeah, they're just like a sealed lead acid. There's nothing spectacular in the technology, in the makeup.
Okay. Right, because a lot of the price for these type of things generally is seen because the lithium batteries are expensive. So, what's the comparative petrol one worth?
They're a little bit more expensive because they don't really start with small models, the zero turns, your Toro, yeah. And I didn't really go looking for them either, to tell the truth.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, because we had our mindset we're going to go battery.
Yeah.
Moving back out of the rural property.
Okay. All right. All right. Nathan's asking if a council was to use them for a commercial or like a commercial application, how do you think they'd go? 8 hours a day.
You wouldn't get 8 hours a day, especially with some of the, like if you're doing parks and you're doing the shorter grass. But if you're doing the sides of roads and things like that, where it's sort of they space the mowing out a fair bit, you wouldn't get 8 hours out of it going through what we did. You saw the higher the grass there. Sometimes you get the side of the road at that height.
The eToro, or sorry, the Toro brand one is designed to go for 8 hours, but it does have like that massive battery. But I mean, God knows, I could not, no matter what I typed into a search, find a price on it. They're a pretty new thing. They have those and one where you stand up on the back as well. But yeah, they seemed, I can't imagine anything like that would be very cheap, and definitely looking at the commercial operator that way. So was it about 1 to 2 hours on the really long stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1 or 2 hours on the really long stuff.
Okay.
So on the shorter stuff, you'd easily get 4 hours out of it.
And what was the charge time like?
They say keep it charged all the time. It's a 500 watt charger. And we only do like an hour or two anyway, at a time, even with the shorter grass. And then we come back to the house and plug it in, and we can do that sort of every afternoon quite easily.
Okay. So playing devil's advocate, like it's really going to be only an issue if you're not maintaining the grass regularly.
That's right. Yeah. If you're not maintaining it and you really want to get it done in one weekend, I think you might struggle with this particular product.
Yeah. So if it has a roughly a 5 kilowatt hour battery and the charger only goes at 500 watts, is that it's going to take about 10 hours to charge?
10 hours to charge, I would admit. Yeah. Well, we've only run it down to about 40%.
Okay.
From the 100, so we haven't taken it right down to get a time on the charge rate.
Well, those Ego ones look interesting if they've got swappable batteries, so you probably wouldn't have that issue, but
you'd be forking out. You have to buy lots of batteries,
right? I don't even want to buy the lithium, the small bloody 4 amp hour ones for my, my blowers and stuff from for the cheap stuff. They're dreadfully, awfully expensive.
And charging them while you're on the mower would be hard too. You'd need individual or a separate charger to charge your swap and go batteries. Unless you charge them all week and have them and stack them during the week and then have them ready for the weekend or all charged and ready to go.
Yeah. We've got another question. Would you have to watch the depth of discharge for lead acid batteries?
As in not take them down too far.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why we haven't been like taken down below 40 odd percent, because I'm aware with lead acids you don't want to take them right down to like 10% or something with you can with other battery technologies. So we keep it up a bit higher.
I mean, it happens in regular cars, right? Where you get a jump start and but it's probably not helpful
Mm.
for the life. Did Ryobi provide any guidance on the battery depth of discharge?
The only
Anything
the only thing they say quite clearly in the manuals, make sure you keep it on charge all the time. But I've got mine on a timer, so it only comes on during daylight hours. So I'm not pulling power from the grid. It's always using the solar from the roof when it's available.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much, Joel. That was interesting. I've got a property myself, but yeah, I don't know if a zero turn's good for slopes, so I don't see myself getting one of them. Might have to have a look at the ride-ons, but and isn't it interesting that like more and more stuff just getting electrified these days? So yeah, in 10 years, it's going to be interesting to see how many petrol applications are still around. So, all right, thank you for that.
Thanks, that.
We're on to Nathan. He's doing sales for 2021.
Hi there.
Yeah.
I'll share a screen if I can.
Surely.
Yeah, there we go.
I have to allow that, or have you already got the ability to do it?
I think we're going. Is
There
that
you go.
a bit of a win? Excellent. Great. Yeah, thanks for that, Joel. I really enjoyed that. I got this bit of a bugbear when I see, I was in Bunnings the other day, and there's a petrol mower on sale, whatever it is, a Victor or something or other, $500 for a petrol mower. And I'm a push mower, suburban kind of person. And it's for exactly the same money. So price parity, let's talk about price parity for a second. Price parity for a typical push mower doing exactly the same job when I went and bought the 82 volt Victor mower recently. That was my Christmas present. And mate, that had chopped through wooden fences. It's pretty solid. So the whole ride-on plant and equipment space, the electrification of plant and equipment, it's coming. I'm talking to a number of councils at the moment, and they're all gasping for solutions there. And really, it's a bit like cars, right? It's all about model availability. You can't buy what you can't buy, and unless we've got some options, and you're talking about the Ego, for instance, really difficult to get hold of. It might be a great solution, but if you can't buy it, you're stuck. Same with the Toro as well. So I've done some research on that too. So that's really cool. Pretty exciting stuff, and another opportunity to electrify your world. I'm always up for them. So we spoke last month about some of the sales figures, and I was guessing at that point in time because it was before they all came out. And so last month we had a little look at the market. And so this is pretty much the same slide as I had last month, but with the revised figures that we've seen come out of the news. For those who've been watching the news closely, you might have seen that Tesla kind of over-egged the pudding on some of their sales figures. And so there was a piece that came out via the EV Council that said Tesla had done 15,000 cars, and someone had carried the one incorrectly, and ultimately came out with a retraction 24, 48 hours later and saying, it was actually 12,000 cars, which was a little bit more than my 11,000 guess last month. So they obviously jammed a few in that last quarter, and we can see that there on the side. So over the whole year, they put out about 7,500 cars for the first 3 quarters of the year. And then in the last quarter, which is basically Vita Prime's numbers versus what actually happened, 4,500 vehicles delivered in the last quarter of last year. So I don't know about you, but I'm seeing lots of C-plated Model 3s out there now. So the second part of their plate starts with a C, and that's kind of all those last quarter cars. And that's exciting because what it does is it's done something that I said at the beginning of the year in one of our sessions. I said there was a chance that we would see 20,000 cars be sold in this year. It was about April or something like that, May, and we hit it. And it's pretty exciting because it's also basically the same amount of vehicles that had been sold, same amount of plug-in vehicles that have been sold since the beginning of the modern era of electric vehicles. So early Leafs, iMEVs, and so on. 2010 onwards, we saw the registration of 20,000 EVs by the end of 2020. And in the year of 2021, we put another 20,000 EVs on the road. So that's pretty exciting. And what that resulted in is nearly a trebling of sales volume in 2021 over 2020. And we're basically cracking for, we're all friends, that's 2% market share. So we jumped straight from about a 0.7% market share in Australia for plugins on a whole entire market in 2020 through to a 2% market share this year. And so there's a number of things that has helped us get there. Supply is important, although that's heavily restricted, and we'll talk about some of that in a short while. There's also clearly some incentives around the country. Southern states have already put forward their incentive packages with basically $3,000 off new cars for the back end of the quarter. So Tesla's added their massive volume in the final quarter to the incentives that were happening in New South Wales and Victoria. So those things have all sort of crescendoed together. So a big old setup. I thought I'd dig into each of these sectors and just break down the 4 components of the graph here. So hydrogen. Wow, there we go. Exciting.
I was hoping you were going to ask about that, because I was going to ask a question where the 38 hydrogen cars in Australia are.
And there they are. I actually saw the breakdown. It's about 24 Nexos and about a dozen Mirais. And so, it's not a groundbreaking number of vehicles, but they're actually that's all there are. So now we have 40,000 plugins and 40 fuel cell vehicles.
A hydrogen police car.
Yes, that's right. There's a hydrogen police car, and it has to drive to 1 or 2 stations across Southeast Queensland to pick up its fuel, and go and fill up and wait at the Bowser whilst we're all off sleeping and charging. And I think one of this is really interesting here is each of these models, they're clearly demonstration vehicles at this point in time. You can't buy one. I've got 100 grand in my hand and I want to buy one of these little fellas. You can't. They will not sell you one. It is only via lease at this stage, and those leases are either going to friends of the brand or the likes of state governments at this point in time. And so Queensland has obviously jumped on that with Q Fleet. Most of us have seen the maroon vehicle at the top there with its Indigenous flavors all over it, because they came to Cleveland. And so, there is the hydrogen space. So let's watch this space. I'm excited to next February to see what that number looks like.
And should we put in a shameful plug that the only hydrogen that's any good is green hydrogen?
Oh, I'm more than happy to say that. More than happy to join that.
We don't want any other colour hydrogen.
99% of the hydrogen available in Australia is grey. And there's no such thing, and this is one from me, there's no such thing as blue hydrogen. It's just grey hydrogen wrapped in a lie. There's no such thing as CCS. It doesn't exist. It's not going to exist for a very, very long time. And so if ever, in any effective way. And so blue hydrogen is not blue, it's just grey. FEVs. Now, I thought this was really interesting because I looked at the graph when I first saw it and went, oh, actually, that's not that many FEVs. And really, it's only about 15% of the volume that we're seeing in front of us here. But we've managed to double the volume. We've managed to see this double volume of FEVs in 2021 over 2020. But really, their volume has been monstered by BEVs, and rightly too, in my opinion. We've got New South Wales and Victoria, who, unlike, let's say, the UK and European nations, have stepped over the first step of putting out incentives. They stepped straight over the top of FEVs. There is no money in the hand to buy a new FEV in Australia. There's only, in any state, there's only money coming from for a BEV and for a hydrogen vehicle. But we saw how successful that's going. The bit that's really interesting there is I often use the analogy of in Africa. They never really had, across ubiquitous, they never really had landline telephones. They went straight from no phones to mobile phones. And they skipped that middle step. And I wonder if in Australia, we're actually going to see this skipping of that middle step, unlike we've seen in maybe Europe and so on. I'll show you something in a second. So I asked myself, is a FEV really a gateway for EVs, or is it just going to be the step over the top? But look, the Outlander did end up being the third best-selling EV in Australia in the year, and so it's obviously making some headway there. And I just wanted to compare that. So what's it look like in another market? And again, that sort of BEV to FEV kind of ratio. And so these are the UK numbers at a very high level. You can see they did 300,000 EVs in the year, which is pretty exciting. But FEV's made a 1/3, 2/3 kind of relationship. And so in the UK, there has been some grants, but those grants have basically been shrunk down to nearly nothing. There's still some FBT equivalent benefits for FEVs in the UK. So there's some taxable reasons for why you might have one. A lot of them are the likes of the BMW 3 Series plug-in or the Mercedes-Benz C-Class plug-in. But there's a vast difference there. And so I just wonder if Australia will actually maybe step past the FEV and just go straight to BEVs, which kind of makes it's a bit of a counter to those folks who say, oh, look, FEVs will give you the range that you need, and you can jump between bigger stations. And to be honest, it's not really telling.
Nathan, could I just ask you a couple of things? One,
yeah.
I'll just make a comment. Well, in England, they don't have a lot of distance between one place and another, right? So you can buy a FEV and drive electric most of the time, right? So I guess in that scenario, then that's probably fair enough. That what would be interesting to see is the breakdown of like fossil fuel versus electric drive out of that FEV portion to see that how much of your chart there is actually electric versus fossil fuel. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. There is a paper by the ICCT which and digs into FEV use, and there's a lot of anti-FEV flavour in Europe at the moment, particularly because they quote Outlander
BMW or something, was it, or
all of them? But I'll just take the Outlander for a second. So the Outlander has a 1.9 litres per 100 Ks rated fuel consumption, and the paper that came out of the Europeans has said that is about it's actually in the real world about 4 times that. So the real world fuel consumption of an Outlander on average is about 8 litres 100 Ks, not 2 litres 100 Ks. And so there is some data around that, but it's always a little bit challenging. There is some telematics based data with a cohort, but you don't know whether that cohort's up one end. So I had a chat with Chris Nash, our ex-president of AEVA once, and he couldn't believe it when I said to him, I've worked with councils that have got Outlanders that have used 15 litres per 100 Ks. I've seen their data, I've seen their fuel card data, 15 litres 100 Ks. He's like, damn, I've never used any fuel in my Outlander. So you get these really, really different cases, and it depends on how conscientious you are as you're plugging in. So
maybe they don't know where the switch is.
Yeah, well, or you don't know where the plug is on the wall. Yeah. If you don't have access to charging, it is a big problem. And they're not efficient hybrids, but they are efficient plug-ins. I think the other thing I'd add to that is the average distance travelled by a UK vehicle is about the same as Australia. So the physical distance from one end to the other, I lived there 10 years, I know what it's like, is one thing. But actually, the driving behaviour is not a lot different to our driving behaviour. We are just metropolitan people that live in a very sparsely populated country. So anyway, I don't know where this is going to go. I'm really interested to see where the FEV volumes go.
Sorry, just one other question. Yeah, sure. What are the top 3 or 4 FEVs in Australia?
So
the Outlander. Yeah. Is that number 1 or?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's number 3 EV all time of last year. Okay. So that was number 3 EV last year. It sold 600 vehicles, which is not a lot of that big pie there, but a reasonable chunk of the FEV group. So you've got clearly the likes of BMW 3 Series plug-in, and there's an iX plug-in, X3 plug-in, and C-Class plug-in. So there's a few of those. There's mini plugins. So, again, you're kind of getting rats and mice. I'm talking a couple of hundred here and a couple of hundred here. Okay. MGHS, so it's a bit bigger than ZS. Plug-in, again, that's done okay. I saw some numbers from that. I've not reported all the numbers today, but I saw some numbers of, in the few hundreds, a couple of hundreds. So I suspect that'll take off a little bit, and you're going to start to see the Eclipse Cross. So Mitsubishi, basically the same setup that's in an Outlander, but in an Eclipse Cross, so a bit smaller, a bit cheaper. And so I expect in next year there will be, in this year, the next set of figures, to see more PHEVs on a total term, so more than 3,300 on a total terms, because there's more model availability. But I still think that the percentage of plug-ins to be, under 20% PHEVs in Australia in 2022 is my guess.
I often wondered how much the Ioniq plug-in actually sold.
Next to none.
I was so shocked. I was driving across the Tedsmount Bridge the other day, and one had plug-in written on the back, and I was like, holy dooly.
So I spoke to a Hyundai dealer a while after, maybe 6 months after that had launched the vehicle, and it was really, he said, look, there are two camps. They're either buying hybrid or they're buying electric, and there's nothing in the middle. And really what you ended up with, the volume in the middle, is the launch volume, and then no one bought the plug-in afterwards. So it was either, I'm going to get an efficient ICE, or I'm going to buy an electric, and those were the two routes to go at. So that's a kind of an interesting one. Now there's been a bit of chat, and I'm sorry I haven't been watching it, so I'm going to just see if I can.
Wayne was just saying that he drove way more in England than he did, or in the UK, than he ever did in Australia.
Sure, absolutely. Well,
my only point was that when I was there, it seemed like everything was, you're in a town and you probably had everything in that town, or I was in a large northeastern city essentially, so it wasn't like I was traveling to the Gold Coast or the Sunshine Coast on the weekend and that type of thing for an hour and a half or whatever. But I mean, I wasn't there that long, so.
Yeah, no, I spent 10 years there, and I'd concur with Wayne. I actually probably did more driving there than I did here, and most of it was in Aston Martin, so that was lots of fun. I'm still paying the penance for all the fuel I used back then. I wanted to, deep dive into Tesla before I come back onto the all non-Tesla vehicles, which is kind of interesting. Look, this 12,000 vehicles is pretty exciting. It's pretty wild. That was almost as many Camrys as were sold in the country in the year. So, Camry's been around for 25 years and has been the choice of taxi drivers and many folk over the year, as reliable as you like. And here we are with, a similar sized sedan, but twice or more the cost, almost selling as many vehicles. So, I mean, there's some interesting bits here. And, if you took the average price of all of the vehicles on this pie chart, it's got to start with a 6 or a 7, right? There's $20,000, $60,000 to $70,000 cars on average. So, there's a lot of money there. Tesla is nearly 60% of the plug-in national plug-in share. And I think, it really blew me away when I had a look at some of the brands that it outsold, and probably Lexus for me was great, because, nothing like outselling a self-charging hybrid. And I was really excited to see just that kind of, really, really punching it out there, and, being a really credible, sales brand with one model against some really great brands like Lexus and Volvo and Land Rover. They're all proper brands, and they've got multiple models. They've got 3, 4, 5, 6 models each. So a pretty intense stuff. And I think for me is the competitions might be coming, maybe eventually, and in Australia probably a lot longer than we'll see it in the likes of Europe, US, or elsewhere. ID3 2023 or 4. When we see Model Y. And this is pretty much the case around the world. Once Model Y volume stabilizes, it's basically twice as much as Model 3. So if we were to place that over the top of this here and use those rules that we're seeing in other countries around the world, is we would have seen 36,000 Teslas last year if we could have had Model Y.
Do you think that I know there's a lot of the talk has been that the Model Y is going to be the hero car for Tesla, but do you think that not having it available now people have just bought the 3 anyway, and that we're still going to see a massive escalation into the Y in sales?
Oh, I personally definitely believe that's the case. I think there's plenty of people who have bought a 3 because they're waiting for a Y. I think there's plenty of people who haven't bought a Y, haven't bought any car, and they've been holding out until they can buy a Y. I think there's people who have bought other things. Gav's mentioned they're selling their 3 for a Y, or adding a Y with their 3, for instance, and going full electric in a two-car household. I think all of those things are going to happen. I think this is played out in other parts of the world. So the first deliveries for UK Model Ys was like last week, the week before, in any decent volume. There's a couple of trickles before Christmas, but not much. And so what you're starting to see is you're starting to see there that demand, is this demand really there? And it's waited so long, and the model's been out there. Same thing happened to Model 3, right? When I was running the Tesla store, Model 3 had been selling. I drove a Model 3 in Fremont some 18 months before we had the first ones delivered here. Didn't stop the volume of vehicles that we've seen. We've got folks holding out for a Model Y. My wife wants a Model Y as soon as we can get hold of a 7-seat one. And I actually think, if we start to break down the Model Y kind of concept is, Model Y is going to come to Australia soon. It'll be 5-seat only. There'll be some people like me who'll hold out until it's a 7-seater. There'll be some other people who hold out for other concepts or other elements as well. So I think there'll always be, I believe there's going to be this ramping incline of demand. And, SUVs are just the hot ticket, right? So we'll see. But I think that there's enough examples of, Australia is a very hot Tesla market. And there's 2 reasons for that. 1, it's a popular brand here. 2, all of the other models are suppressed because we don't get the volume, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. So it's a hot Tesla market. It's a bit like America. 50-60% of all electric cars sold in America are Teslas. And so you're seeing this exact same setup where basically 2-to-1 sales of Model Y over 3. Look, there'll be seasonality and there'll be some changes, but that's what the manufacturing numbers are looking like on a global scale in time, and that's what I think we'll see here in sales. So, that's pretty exciting if we're going to see, 30,000-40,000 Teslas of 2 models in the course of the next, a full year. If we focus in on the green square or the green wedge now, about a quarter of all plug-in sales come from the other brands, non-FEVs, they're BEVs, and they, and that's been a big rise as well. This sector here has grown by 191% in the year. So the sales growth has been commensurate with the rest of the growth. So the whole entire lot grew by 200%, and so did this wedge here, 200%. The FEVs 200%. So pretty exciting time for the whole entire segment. And I was a bit surprised personally when I started to look down what sold in the year. 500 Konas, 500 XC40s. We've seen those up close, and they're both great cars, similar kind of size, but not enough volume. There's just not enough of them, right? No. The Ionic, that's probably it's done its dough. It's been there. It's probably a couple of thousand of them on the roads in total. Probably could have done better. Nissan Leaf, 360. There's as many EQAs were bought as Nissan Leafs in 2020.
That's surprising, isn't it?
Surprising, right? I'm looking at these contributions. You're like, oh, really? And I think, EQA, personally, not a very exciting car, but not a very exciting EV. But there it is, much more expensive than a Leaf. Probably in some cases, not as good a car as a Leaf. From an electric vehicle point of view, okay, it's got some other bells and whistles, but it's probably not as good as an electric vehicle. Although it probably does have cooling, of course. But it's there beating the world's longest selling nameplate in EVs. And then poor old I-Pace, getting completely trousered by the e-tron and also EQC, and so that vehicle sold 70 in the previous year and 44 this year. So, and then I believe there was a sort of somewhere in the order of 100 in 2019. So, a couple of hundred cars nationally. I'm not 100% sure if that's demand or a supply issue.
Well, they're expensive, you know.
Well, they're no less or more expensive than an e-tron or an EQC or, you know, that sort of vehicle, or the iX, for instance, which sold 35 in the year. And that was obviously launch volume at the back end of last year. So, yeah, look, it's interesting to see. What took out place number 2 of all EVs was the ZS EV. Obviously, you know, the face shape, I've chosen that picture there because that's the model we've seen lots of, but we're just starting to, you know, see some pictures and bits and pieces about the new shape and the new face and shape of the ZS. We're not going to see that for a little while, but we will see it soon enough. You know, again, this all comes back to Australia is a bit of a cousin when it's receiving volume for these vehicles around the world. You know, the Ioniq 5, I haven't put those numbers, I didn't put all the numbers here, but you know, Ioniq 5 is like 197. We're only going to get another 500 for this year. I'm sure if they really tried, they could sell a couple of thousand if we could get the volume. The other one I think was exciting, and this is starting to say for me that EVs are being accepted in those areas that are, you know, maybe sacred, you know, 911, right? That's in a lot of circles is the ultimate sports car. Personally, I don't fit in them very well, never liked them. I'm an Aston guy, but they are certainly, you know, there's certainly a massive following for them. And there you go. They sold about 460 911s and they sold about 530 Taycans last year in Australia. So it's clearly, you know, it's a launch car, it's a hot car, but it's expensive, right? But it's great. And there it is, outselling 911, the icon car of the Porsche brand. So it's a pretty exciting time to be into EVs. There's lots of you know, shining lights through these numbers, and I, you know, my thoughts are, as long as we get the volume, we will crush this again, and it'll be a 30 or a 40 thousand car 2022, at least, you know, at least doubling the number, I think is possible from a demand side point of view. It's just whether or not we get the supply of those vehicles that are seen overseas.
There was a very good chance we could have sold more than 2,000 Ioniq 5s. We only got offered, what, 400, and then they dropped that to 240 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the head of Kia came out just after the Kia Open, the Australian Open, and they're only going to get about 500, 400.
500, yes.
He said that they've got demand that they easily would sell 3,000. So there's a 6-to-1 demand to supply ratio for Kia. I would say that it's not far off the same for the Hyundai, you know, 5 to 6 to 1, you know, and then you've got to ask yourself the question, where else does that fit? Is that the same with Polestar? We've seen no Polestar volume yet. You know, is there going to be a 5 or 6 to 1 ratio of demand to supply? You know, and I think there is that underlies in the situation here, and not everybody's ready to wait 6 months for a car in real world land. We all might, but not everybody's ready for it. They want to drive away tomorrow. And if there was the volume on the ground, which I understand there is for ZS EV, if you want to buy an EV, go and buy a ZS EV, because that's what's available right now. There's a few or a dozen in a dealership. So pick your color.
There's a lot of weight on petrol and diesel cars as well.
Sure.
Like I know the Land Cruiser 300 series is like some ridiculous weight, like 2-3 years or something.
I couldn't be more happy for them.
Yeah.
I also couldn't care less. But it's definitely a thing across the board with lots and lots of vehicles out there.
It's components and stuff.
Components, chips, shipping. Shipping's a massive problem at the moment globally for cars. Shipping costs have gone through the roof, and so all these things into the mix. You know, you end up put them into the soup and you stir it up. You're not going to be quite sure what you're going to get, but ultimately, you know, it's still an exciting time. Australia's still undersupplied. It's over demand. And all we can do collectively as we, you know, do our things around our EV space is keep going with supporting those who are interested, helping them to learn, and then also, you know, banging the drum with the right people to make a change in policy that will support that. And I'm going to talk to some of the things that are going on in some brands overseas. So who's given up the gas? So last week or so, Nissan have come out and said that they're going to stop developing ICE engines. specifically for Europe. Why is that? Well, Euro 7 is the next tranche of emissions standards that we're seeing coming out of Europe, and that is basically we're happy for you to make an internal combustion engine. We basically want you to emit air, and it has very, very stringent particulate and NOx, nitrous oxides limits. And so most manufacturers are starting to say, you know what, you could do it. It's going to cost a fortune. It's going to make the cars more expensive. The R&D is massive, and we'll just make EVs because that solves the problem. And so that's certainly what Nissan has come out and said this week, that they're going to stop investing in ICEs for ICE engine technology for Europe. They are still going to do some things for other markets, particularly America, big trucks, the Titan truck and so on. But where will that fit for us is a question. I'm not sure. Will we continue to get them? Japan, they haven't said this about Japan, so they're going to continue to make ICE technology for Japan. Are we still going to see those kinds of vehicles? Who knows? But they've certainly said that they're going to bring in micro, and they think that's going to be like really cheap. It's going to be a ubiquitous car, democratizing the EVs, so they say. But really, Nissan is a disappointment, in my opinion. I think they could have done a lot better. They had an amazing start. They've got decent technology, and they did it once, and then they stopped. And a current Nissan is broadly an old Nissan with a different clothing on it. In very much most elements. So we'll see, but certainly these are directions. These are clear statements by big organizations. Remember that Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi are all one big alliance. So here's these guys saying what they're doing, and that's going to be resonating with all of their cousin brands. And then another nameplate, which is an interesting one. It's a bit of a wacky one. We don't see lots of them. Tesla certainly outsold these guys last year. I think probably most EVs did. But they have also, these are some sacred cows. Both Maserati have already said this as well. Ferrari have started to bend the knee, as they say in some of those great medieval shows, on EVs, and starting to bring that in. So we're starting to see commitments. So Alpha said they're going to be all EV globally, even into America by 2027. Now that's ages away, right? But from a vehicle platform point of view, that's not that far away. And they're going to bring their first model full EV in 2024. So I find this a little bit curious, but they are part of the massive Stellantis group, which is now the Fiat Chrysler, the name for Fiat Chrysler. And they are going to be, they are going to be a force to reckon with. Again, in Australia, we're going to miss out a little bit in the initial. So they've just announced the Tonale, which is an SUV. It's kind of an X3 size, your typical small Q3 X3 sized SUV, and a PHEV for Europe. We're going to get a mild hybrid, which basically means an alternator hybrid, and that's the beginning of their. I wish my Italian was a little bit better, but La Metamorfosi, which is their metamorphosis. And I think they're going to be a long time in the cocoon in Australia, but they'll eventually come out and show us what they've got. And when obscure brands like this start to say we're going all EV, the switch is not far away for all those others who are around. Has anybody got any other thoughts? Any idea on BEV sales volume for Gen 22? No one's, that's not really being reported. I haven't got the direct figures from the FCAI. It wouldn't really matter if we did. That'd only be a percentage of the overall sales. Tesla hasn't had that many deliveries. I think the very first boat has just landed, so there'll be basically no Tesla sales, or all but no Tesla sales in January.
There's 1,200 on the next boat, isn't there?
Yeah, something like that. There's about 1,200. I think they're due to dock not that far away, a week and a half away, something like that. They're not that far away, so there'll be another swathe of vehicles being delivered. And as is Tesla's way, it's usually back end or mid to back end loaded within the quarter. So, and I also understand that online we started to see basically a 6-month wait on Model 3 if you go in and put in an order now. So, you know, back to demand versus supply. You don't have a demand problem in Australia for EVs. Just thought I'd close out with next month. I would have liked to do it this month, just didn't have the time. I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive into the light commercial vehicle market. So we'll look at utes and vans. I know there's some interested parties around the traps and vans particularly, but also utes. We'll dredge up what we know. We'll have a look at what's coming. We'll have a look at what we're missing out on, because there's some really cool vans in Europe that we're not getting. And we'll have a bit of a brains trust approach to what do we think will take off in the light commercial vehicle market. Will Australians switch from utes to vans because they're available in EV, or will we hold on to the old ute? Probably.
Definitely hold on.
Maybe not. I don't know. It's interesting.
They've got to die yet, you know. People not necessarily geeing up for an EV until their current dual cab ute dies anyway.
Oh, I'm not sure if that's really the case. I'm sure that there's lots of people.
I think everyone's holding out.
Happy to trade. I think lots of people are happy to trade in their 3-year-old dual cab ute for another 3-year-old dual cab ute. Seem to do that a lot. I think, you know, this, and I'll probably deep dive in here about some of the tax rules and so on that cause LCVs an over representation in the Australian market as well, and where does that fit with EVs as well. So we'll do a bit of a deep dive into the light commercial vehicle market next month.
What category does the Ford F-150 Lightning fall into? Certainly not light.
It certainly falls into the category of not coming to Australia anytime soon.
No.
I think
that's a shame.
Yeah, you know. There's a lot of demand, again, demand supply. There's a lot of demand in America to fulfill first before they start thinking about making a right-hand drive one. But the F-150, depends which version it is, but ultimately if it's GVM, gross vehicle mass is below 4,500 kilos, it's a light commercial vehicle. And I'm pretty sure it will be just fitting into that space. But, you know, some of the Cybertruck touted specs we're probably going to, you know, maybe go over into the bigger vehicle size. So you need to have a light rigid license to drive the thing.
Yeah,
so,
I saw a Cybertruck with wing mirrors and windscreen wiper. Yeah,
there was a
little drone footage show.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that was a leak. So yeah, look, we'll see. Elon said it the other day in the earnings call. Cybertruck's not coming to any roads in 2022. Certainly not Australian roads, but certainly not, and said not any roads. So whether he breaks his promise, we'll see. He surprises and delights later in the year, who knows? But ultimately, that cohort of vehicles are a little while away. I'm thinking, I'm almost certain you'll likely see a Chinese-made full EV ute delivered in Australia ahead of the likes of an F-150 or Cybertruck.
Hidden as the old GWM.
Possibly. Great Wall.
Yeah.
Possibly. Anyway, we'll do a bit of deep dive into that.
Sounds good.
Next month.
Next month at the hall, hopefully.
Yeah, with a bit of luck.
Okay. All right. Unless anyone else has got a comment, thank you very much for joining us. Does anyone need to say anything? All silent, all done, sold. All right. Thank you very much to our speakers tonight. And here's keeping our fingers crossed for a hall meeting at the Albion Peace Centre in March on the 16th. I'll see you then.
Great to
Bye
see
for
you all.
now.